we did, regardless from a manifestation standpoint, because at the end of the day, it's the same thing. So everything that we have in our lives, we manifest. And when it comes to things like helping someone heal from addiction, and it doesn't matter if that's ourselves or for somebody else, there's a lot of subconscious trauma that kind of goes along with that. Because the main thing about manifesting change is about living in the end and getting a different result by basically make-believe pretending that whatever it is that you want is no longer here. If there is a lot of pain and a lot of hurt and you're kind of stuck in the middle of it, that can be a little bit hard. And not because it's difficult from a difficulty standpoint, it's more difficult from a persistence standpoint. So basically, you would have to rewire your subconscious in a couple of different ways. First, you basically need to assess what is my relationship with the person that I want to help with like. How does their addiction make me feel about myself? How does it affect the family dynamic? How does it affect the person that I want to help? All of these things are pretty important. And then you also need to think about what is the status like based on all of the things that you all went through together. A really, really good place to start would be to basically try and figure out why did they slip into addiction in the first place. What is it that they were missing in their lives that made them turn to addiction? And I have a family member that goes through addiction, and it's tough. I know exactly what it feels like. I know exactly what it can do to families, but it's really, really important to try and take a step back and look at it from an outsider looking in. I always liken manifestation to writing a book. You're the author of your book. You're the creator of your reality. You make the rules. So if you were a character in your book that was dealing with a situation like this, how would you write your character story, the mindset, the way they walk, the way they talk, the way they think, the way they interact with that person in order to change their current situation? I actually might make a part 2 because I want to give you some affirmations to go along with that, but you really can't make proper personalized affirmations until you really got to the core of the problem. And especially if you're having a family member deal with it, there's always the family dynamic that plays a massive, massive role in this. So you first need to ask yourself, what is my role in this? Okay, this is part 2 on how to help a family member or yourself out of addiction with manifestation. And I put some headphones in, so I hope the audio is better this time around. So in part 1, we already kind of discussed to try and figure out what like your role in all of this is, because like I said, especially when it's family, friends, there's always a very specific dynamic as to why your subconscious brought this basically into your life, if that makes sense. And kind of one of the things that I've really noticed, especially through my work, like back when I was doing psychology and stuff like that, and as someone who's kind of, going through this myself, there's kind of 2 kinds of people that are usually around this. The first one is the kind of person that absolutely hates this and despises this and can't understand it, doesn't understand it. They kind of have empathy, but it's almost like so sometimes they really don't have empathy for it because they just can't understand it, but sometimes they just don't have empathy for it anymore because they tried so hard to help them and there was just no way out of it. The second kind of people are the kind of people that secretly have this in them as well, but for whatever reason they can't live it out, so it's almost like they're secretly enabling them because they're vicariously living through that person. I'm not talking about the bad parts of it, it's more like blocking out the bad parts and only seeing the good part, which is why in part 1 I said it's so important to understand what is your role in this. And once you understand where you are at, that is then where you need to hook into starting your manifestation. And I am actually uploading a video, hopefully today or tomorrow, that will be very extensive and very long, where I will discuss literally every manifestation method I could think of. So you can either choose any one of them, or you can just do affirmations. So repeating them to yourself over and over again until they seep in your subconscious, which can take a while, especially if there's a lot of history around it. Some really good affirmations for you guys would be, and this is just a couple, kind of depends, and they're just generalized. The more specific you are, the better would be. We are safe and secure. We feel seen and loved and heard. You know, in your case, my sister is clean and sober, and she's safe and she's healthy. We are fulfilled in our lives. We have developed healthy coping mechanisms to deal with our past and present future drama, like trauma, sorry, not drama, trauma. Me, I, her, we are in full control of our emotions at all times. We are in control of our lives and our destiny. We're happy, healthy, and have found inner peace within ourselves. Part 3. Okay, this is part 3 on how to either help yourself or a family member get out of addiction through manifestation. Please watch part 1 and 2 because they're really, really vital and important, because otherwise it really won't make sense. So in part 1, we talked about establishing your role. In part 2, I gave you, a little bit more in-depth info and some affirmations you can use. And in part 3, which is probably the most important one, now we kind of have to reverse engineer your story about the person who suffers from it, or if it's yourself, doesn't really matter. But at the end of the day, regardless of whether you're the person suffering from it or a family member, you are still somehow always involved in that story. And this is where self-concept comes into play. Now, self-concept is not self-confidence. Self-concept is the way you see yourself, the way you think other people or the world sees you, and it can also tie into the relationship you have with your sibling or whoever suffers from it. I'm just answering like a specific comment right now. This is oftentimes where, when we're trying to manifest our way out of it, we kind of stumble and feel like we screwed up our manifestation, which is something that you can't do. You can only delay it, never screw it up. But because, and this is especially problematic if you're dealing with someone with addiction, because there's a lot of hope and a lot of disappointment that kind of comes and goes in waves. So whenever you are in a good place with that person or yourself, that fear of the shoe always like being ready to drop at any point in time is so prevalent that you feel like you can never rest. It's like you're constantly in fight or flight and can never catch your breath. And in order to manifest betterment, it is, I don't want to say it's vital, but it is inherently important to find a good space at any point in time where you can say, I'm going to take a deep breath now. I'm going to enjoy the fact that it's good right now. And this is the energy that I'm going to harness moving forward. Because manifestation is about living in the end. And what does living in the end look like? Living in the end means that you or the person that you're worried about are healthy and sober, and they're at a point where relapse is not really on your mind or on their mind. So you need to ask yourself, how would I think? How would I feel? How would I walk? What kind of relationship would I have with them? And our subconscious can't differentiate between real and what we make up. So if you are someone who can't have this relationship in real life, imagine it, visualize it, think about it before you go to bed, script it out, read it to yourself, put it in your affirmations, write out a full ass story about how life is really good and you guys feel really safe in recovery. I know it can sound like an impossible task, but I know you guys can do it because you're already here. You ask the questions, you're ready to do the work. That's all you need to do.